Welcome back to the Flex Diet Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Mike T. Nelson. On the podcast here, we talk about all things to increase muscle performance, improve body composition, all in a flexible manner without destroying your health in the process. Today on the podcast, my good buddy DC, Dr. David Church, and we are going deep down the rabbit hole of all things protein, training, testosterone, and much more. I've known him for several years now and got to hang out with him at the ISSN meeting this past June once again down in Florida. I was giving a talk there on primer on psychedelics. He was giving a great talk. I think it was about protein, or it might have been about the study we talked about here with testosterone supplementation with military. And I think you'll really enjoy this podcast. We talk all about Wingate testing, what that is, how I increased my calf size by 1 inch in about 4 months, and what he did for calf training, our vasculature, or how you supply nutrients to the muscle. Is that really a limiter for muscle growth? Why you should be doing some aerobic and cardiovascular work, even if you just want to get bigger and stronger. Actual foundations of training, the impact of exercise, and how it affects protein metabolism. Why perfect nutrition can actually be a bad idea for some athletes. Is testosterone actually anti-catabolic as a main mechanism of action? Well, some really great stuff there, looking at highly catabolic burn patients and what we think the role of testosterone really is. Why you probably don't want to be the supplement science guy in the room all the time if you're doing consulting, and a whole lot of other great stuff here. So he is an assistant professor at UAMS and has published a ton of research in the area of protein metabolism. He just recently was one of the head authors on a new position stand through the ISSN, so the Journal of International Society of Sports Nutrition, all about the use of essential amino acids. And we'll link on the website to several of the great studies that he's done. So sit back and enjoy this podcast with the wide-ranging, super informative stuff. If you enjoy this, you can also check out my newsletter, which is completely free. Go to miketnelson.com/podcast. You'll find all the old podcasts that I've done. We've got quite a few now. Also, any guest podcasts I've done. And if you scroll down, you'll be able to get onto the daily newsletter. That's where I send out all geeky stuff in a hopefully informative way to help you add muscle, improve body composition, all that wonderful stuff. So go to miketnelson.com/podcast, and you'll be able to hop onto the newsletter completely free. We'll put a link down below in your favorite podcast player here that'll take you directly to it. So enjoy this podcast here with the wide-ranging things all about muscle, protein, testosterone, and more with Dr. Myohead himself, Dr. David Church. Welcome back to the Flex Diet Podcast. I'm here today with Dr. David Church. How's it going, man?
Oh, living the dream. What about you?
I'm doing good. I can tell it's the beginning of the semester because your corkboard is rather empty. So it must be the beginning of the semester.
I don't have to teach.
Oh, then it might always be empty.
Yeah, I was going to say it's actually how it always looks. In fact, that I'm pointing to study that we're getting ready to start. And the only reason it's up there is because my study coordinator wanted me to pay attention to it. So normally it's even more bare than that. So I almost forget. I have to see the tweet in order to remember, like, when semesters start, when finals roll around. I'm a little separate from that, for better or worse. There's pros and cons.
Yeah, I assume you like just doing more of the research then, I would assume.
I like it. Yeah, I like the research. I think I wouldn't mind teaching like a graduate level course because, yeah, I think there's real value in teaching, like, particularly that age range or even like undergrads, because they know what's quote unquote like the new thing being pushed in exercise and or nutrition. So it's a good way to make sure that you're aware of all the new developments and new stuff going on. That's not just in PDF form, so to speak. So I miss that part of it, but I like being able to do research all the time.
Yeah. The thing that was when I did more of the undergraduate stuff when I was doing my PhD was I don't remember what I was talking about. And I remember asking people, I'm like, well, you guys are exercise phys students, right? You're all seniors. Like you must exercise. And they just looked at me. I'm like, how many of you like don't exercise at all? And it was like half the class.
Wow.
And I was like, why are you here? And they're like, oh, we're pre-nursing, pre-physical therapy, pre-whatever. I was like, oh, okay. There was only like 4 like hardcore only exercise phys people in it, which I was shocked. I was like, oh, weird.
Yeah, when I did my PhD at University of Central Florida, and I taught ex-phys and strength conditioning, sports nutrition there. And Florida's different. But I think the majority of my students were all pretty into exercise. Even if there was some type of, like you said, preclinical track, everyone there was very interested in working out. So I hope now if we walked into a class,
I hope it's better.
Yeah, I hope they're all like, yeah, I at least get my 10,000 steps a day, and so to speak. So
yeah, they were all bitching on the Wingate day, and nobody wanted to be the first person. So like by the third lab, because I did 6 labs on one day, and then it would repeat the following week. So like by lab 3, I was getting pissed off, and I was just like, all right, I'll go first, and then you all have to see if you can beat my score. And they're like, oh, okay.
Good for you.
I was regretting that after I did it, but it lived.
I can't say I would have raised my hand to do the Wingate first either. So
yeah,
I can't blame them, especially on those 30-second ones. Those are brutal.
Yep. Oh, it's horrible because for people who are listening, we have the old Monarch bikes where you get on there, you pedal as hard as you can. And it's a cool idea. They put this little band around a wheel, you put a bunch of weight on it, and you pull this lever, and boom, all the weight hits the wheel. So it goes from 50 watts to 380, 400 watts like instantly. And it's so weird because at first you're like, oh, yeah, I felt that. Oh, this isn't so bad. I got this. And about like 15 seconds in, you're like, I'm not really sure. 10 seconds left. It feels like your legs just got replaced with bags of concrete. And then you wobble off and you're like, oh, I don't know. It feels so good now.
Yeah. It's a cool test. I love watching.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I love watching it.
Oh, it was fun. We'd have the people from Cal Dietz. He was around the corner because we were in Mariucci. And so his assistants would come down once in a while. And it'd be funny just to see them pretend to walk through our lab, which they never did. When I asked the one guy, Kevin, I said, hey, you guys must have figured out it's Wingate Day, because I noticed everyone just casually walking through the lab. He's like, oh, yeah, one of your students was puking in their bathroom.
Yeah, and I think that's the day that you consistently see lactates at 14 to 16 in there. And it's a good awakening as a student. I've done plenty, but the first time I did one, I was like, oh, that's what the anaerobic system is, so to speak. Like, predominant anaerobic system. So yeah, because like you said, that first 10 seconds, probably just that phosphagen system, but from 10 to 30, that's torture.
Yeah. And you have a whole new, I think, respect for people who are like 400-meter runners or crazy stuff on bike sprints or rowers of all kinds, or people who just live at these like just crazy high lactate levels. And again, you're only looking at blood lactate. You don't know how much appears, how much goes away, how well they can buffer, all that kind of stuff. But it's probably, I think, the most miserable area. And anyone who's done a lot of sprinting will be like, 100 meters, okay, I'm slow. 200, definitely slow. Like that 400-meter range, the 60-second range, 30 to 60 seconds to 3 minutes. If you're going all out, it's always just miserable.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And you start getting appreciation for why all those disciplines have these massive quads.
Yeah.
Just the amount of work, metabolic work being done in such a short time frame. It's just astronomical. So
yeah, because that was the old argument for a while that you can't build enough hypertrophy without eccentric exercise. And then you see the photos of these freaks who are like sprint cyclists with quads that are like the size of my trunk. And you're like, I don't think they're doing a lot of eccentric stuff, but it looks like it's working for them.
Yeah, I know. those guys have huge. You're right. Those legs are just ginormous. I've never seen anything like it.
I think in sport, that is the biggest legs I think I've ever seen. It just seems, and there's there's outliers here and there, but in terms of what you would say is Olympic level sports like that, I don't know. I think that's the one if I had to pick one, I guess.
I'm with you there. I always draw that similar analogy to soccer players and their calves.
Yes.
They always have huge calves. It's you talk about, and I'm not making fun of them, but bodybuilders are always like, you can't get my calves to grow. It's man, go to the soccer field, man. They'll grow.
Yeah.
Every
Yeah.
single one of them. And it's not even like just an EPL thing. I remember I played Division 3 sports, but all the guys and girls that played soccer at my little D3 school, they all had big calves. Yeah, so I agree with you. Something about different sports, different loads, different muscle groups.
Yeah. My thought was you don't see any. I haven't seen an exception yet, but very large mammals always have large calves. Like you'll
Yeah.
see the inverse. Like you'll see some smaller people who have just freakish calves, and I always ask them about them because the answer is usually the same. Oh, I don't really train much. I've never really trained them. So what the hell? But you don't see large people with small calves. So the most I ever put on my calves when I actually bothered to really train them much other than just minimal right now was I'm like, what if I just do heavy farmer's walks and barefoot shoes like 3 days a week? I think I put like an inch on my calves in 4 months because I'm just simulating heavy walking like all the time.
Yeah. Well, to that point, like I'm not a small guy for your listeners at home. And I've definitely been accused of you only have big calves because you're a big guy. And it's okay, probably. It does have to support me. But I've recently increased doing a lot more cardio. So I've been doing a lot more running before I left. And my calves are just getting bigger. But
Oh,
to your point,
geez.
it's repeated. It's a little resistance workout for them every time they got to push my body down the track. I mean, that's quite the load for them. So yeah.
Yeah,
And
because
I do the farmers walks and stuff too. I agree with you.
running, you're looking at what, 4 to 6 to maybe 8 times load. I mean, it's an impact load, so it's an impulse, so it's very short, but still, I mean, you had even just go up in body weight by 20 pounds. That's a big difference on the same human. That's a
Yeah.
huge difference.
Yeah. And plus you're increasing, we know whether it's farmers walks or I'm just doing some, I would call it jogging. When I played football, we called it a hog jog. Uh, so maybe somewhere between that and jogging, but I'm just doing that. But you're definitely going to increase the vascular supply to the muscle, like Luke Van Loon's, and I can't remember who the lead author. I think it's Milan Betts.
Hmm.
They've shown that increased capillarization of muscles related to the muscle metabolism. So, and I think Stu Phillips' lab just came out with a paper in the past year, showing that if you did you took people who are untrained and you had them do some type of aerobic training first
Yeah.
and then resistance training, actually gain more mass with the prior aerobic training. So that blood supply is, you're getting, like you said, you're getting that muscular contraction of a high force, but on top of that, you're increasing the blood supply. So you're coming at it from two different angles.
Do you, do you think muscle contraction is more oxygen based than what we realize? I know it's a broad, general, open-ended question.
Disclaimer, I study metabolism of macronutrients, but we'll give
Yeah.
this one a try. And for people that don't know at home, you're probably like oxygen and bioenergetics. So bioenergetics is a little different than metabolism.
Yeah.
They're related. I get into it, but there's certainly someone better to answer this question. But one of the papers I like the most that I've been on was a review paper I wrote with Nate Jenkins and his group at the University of Iowa. Niall Banks and Emily Rogers were the lead. They were his grad students. They took the lead, and they came from the vascular side of things, and Dr. Ferrando and I provided the muscle metabolism input. And we were just trying to make the argument that the vascular system is totally overlooked when it comes to protein metabolism. It's like you don't have healthy blood vessel mass is there. It doesn't really matter how much protein you take. You know what I mean? So when you're talking about muscular contraction being related to oxygen consumption, is that what you're like?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, probably. I mean, I can't really expand too much, but my knee jerks to say yes, because especially if you look at like the blood flow restriction research, right? If as soon as they strap on those cuffs, they hit task failure much quicker than without the cuffs on. So yeah, I mean, yes.
Yeah. I mean, I think 10 years ago, I would have said no, because all your heaviest loads are, my little air quotes here, anaerobic, and you need the heavy loading and you need just tension. And that's the only thing. You just give it some amino acids and you're good. But then I started seeing stuff like, I've talked about this before, but Aaron Davis, I think, had a guy do a 30-second all out on the rower. So Wingate stuck a Moxie, so a little thing that looks like infrared that can look at local oxygen use on one of the quads. And you see it start off, it's 85%, and then it just starts dropping immediately. And by the end of the 30 seconds, it was down to 19%.
Yeah.
And which, for people listening, that's basically just saying, my air quotes again, oxygen use, right? It's just depleting the oxygen out of the muscle. And I'm looking at that and I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. Either this device is complete dog shit or everything I learned is not right. Because I was told, like, this is very anaerobic still, like 10 seconds is the max, and then it drops from there, and that Wingates are, you build up a lot of lactate and it's anaerobic glycolysis, blah, 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 all this stuff, which is true. But I never would have thought that your oxygen depletion would be that low at the end. And it turns out it looks like the device is probably correct. And I think that you're always using oxygen in the background, just to higher degrees than I think me as just a meathead would have ever visualized, I guess, or thought about.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it, is like from what you would expect. Like this is
Right.
all like a relative conversation,
Oh,
right?
100%. Yeah.
If you were to talk to someone that like studies that, they'd be like, of course. And it's like,
Of
well,
course, you
no,
idiot.
but like, we're talking about from when I was like you said, a little meathead in undergrad. And then I had a similar experience in my PhD. Kyle Byer was doing a dissertation on repeated sprints in adolescence. And we got a NIRS device, which, like you said, is kind
Yeah.
of measuring,
Yep.
it's measuring hemoglobin saturation, technically, I think, or myoglobin saturation. And I was willing to be the guinea pig, and we did that, and then we did the O2 sat on my finger,
Mm-hmm.
and we got my O2 sat down to on my finger down to 50% or
Oh,
something like something.
Jesus.
Yeah, I remember like getting a little lightheaded, and mind you,
Yeah.
we were also playing with the caveat there is we just got new altitude chamber systems.
Oh, okay.
And so I have a picture, I put the mask on and we put me up at 13,000 feet
Oh,
too.
that'll do it.
Yeah, but the point is you just kept seeing with each success, with each sprint, it just got lower and lower. Like I did 3 or 4 and I had to stop and I had to wait like an hour to get home. Like just 3 or 4 sprints at Pikes Peak altitude, no big deal. Just subsequently down, I got down, like I said, like 65, 60%, something like that. And I was like, I'm not feeling too good, guys. Unhooked me, just waited about an hour, went home. Everything was fine. But yeah, I mean, clearly oxygen's a major component of performance. I mean, it's huge in electron transport chain, as
Yeah.
everyone talks the book. So yeah, anyway.
Yeah. I always ask people my crazy question. And then, have you ever dreamt or thought that you read a study and for the life of you, for 10 years after, you can't find said study and it just drives you insane?
I know, but that's because my dreams are like real life. So, so I'm usually writing a paper or writing a grant or a paper, but I'll do that like in my day-to-day life where I'm like, I know I read that somewhere. And then I spend like a whole day trying to find it,
Yeah.
and I never do, but someone usually knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Because I swear I read this. Of course, it was a Russian paper, right? Of that when you do aerobic training for, let's say, increasing muscle hypertrophy to augment blood flow, vascularization, angiogenesis, all this stuff, that there was a big uptick at around, like, I think the 4 to 6 week mark, which I've seen anecdotally in clients. But again, maybe that's just because of training. They're not new to it. Who knows? But I think their hypothesis was that the blood vessels grow from opposite sides, and that once they connect, you'll see this huge uptick in blood flow, which makes kind of sense. But I can't find that paper if my life depended upon it. But it sounds like a cool story.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to punt on that one. I have
Yeah, that's all right.
but it would agree with the data. Like I said, we were
Yeah,
talking earlier. I think all those studies do show 4 or 6 weeks of some type of aerobic preconditioning just takes
yeah,
off. Yeah. And I'm
yeah,
sure there's something about, I mean, you get into a Vershansky's, I just butchered that, but I'm talking about
yeah.
Vershansky's stuff about, just like generalized training
Yep.
is where you got to start. There's no need to get into specific training or trying to be an elite master. And so you just get like a base level of fitness, so to speak. And I hate that word fitness, but for lack of a better one, just a base level of a foundation of training. And from there then you can start having a little bit more fun.
Yeah, I mean, if your VO2 max, your aerobic capacity is that of a field mouse, and it's like sub 20s, like good luck trying to recover from freaking anything. You just
Yeah,
need to get more conditioned, trained, whatever word you want to throw at them.
yeah. You're not going to be doing any 20 rep squat sets. There's no way that's
No.
happening. Yeah, yeah, I'm with you on that. So and what's funny is I've been talking to more and more people, PhDs, scientists in my field, but also people that walk the walk, right? There's plenty of us that train hard and plenty more than me that have the credentials to show that they've trained hard, but also have a good background education. And we're all starting to be like, oh, I've been ignoring this aerobic system for too
Yep.
long. I'm starting to see my gains and my strength and my performance go up and I'm feeling better. It's, oh, who would have thought? It's like you said, you go back and you just read the literature and it's like, tried to tell us. We just didn't want to listen.
Yeah, and that, especially the history of exercise phys, like aerobic stuff was like the thing because, oh, look, we got these cool metabolic carts now. We're not using Douglas bags anymore. And, oh, we have a treadmill. We can do all
Yeah.
this stuff in the lab and we don't have to chase people around with shit.
Yeah, no, the amount of professors that were like, you really need to do some aerobic training. I'm like, no, I play football and baseball, man. I got 7 seconds at best out of me. And they probably were right. Probably should have done a little bit more aerobic work. Probably have been a little better athlete. Might have swum more of the field, but not too much, right? I'm not saying you need a ton, particularly in those sports, but yeah, I mean, now how old am I in the last 2 years? Like I'm 32 to 34. I'm like, oh, felt a lot better than I did when I was 28, 27. Maybe not as good as I was when I was 24, but when you're under 26 as a male, I think you're like indestructible. Is
Yeah,
my
you're fine. Doesn't
yeah.
matter.
I mean, we've tried to break like 18 to 25-year-olds in these military studies, so and they're just unbreakable. Just like me, yeah, they get injured and they're not feeling great, but we're throwing the kitchen sink at them. I mean, yeah, I was doing my PhD, but I was eating a caloric surplus, getting pretty good, reasonable sleep, so to speak, and this, that, and the other. It's like that compared to now. I got 2 kids. Sleep's a mystery, but yeah, it turns out running helps. Do some type of cardio. It's not always running, but some type of cardio. I feel a lot better. I feel a little sharper mentally, and then on top of that, my lifts are just like it just feels smoother for those that lift, and they know exactly what I'm talking about. And I'm getting stronger, so like that's always fun.
Yeah, that's one of those lessons. It's hard to impart to people until they actually feel the difference. Because I was the same way. Like for like many years ago, I did some competitive powerlifting, but my bench press was more than my squat. The first time I ever squatted, the announcer, he's like, okay, 3 white lights, plenty deep, because I was doing like an Olympic level back squat. I was like this far off the ground,
Yeah,
like 185 pounds.
I that was me in my undergrad. I was like, because I was an undergrad from 2008 to 2012, something like that. I could be wrong. Someone's gonna listen to this and tell me I'm way off. Or like the ISSN conference.
Yeah.
I like lied about my age there on accident. But back then it was like ass to grass. That's how
Yeah.
everyone squatted, and that was the thought. And so some guys on the team would always make fun of me, like, yeah, I was deep enough. Okay, I'm just trying to make sure I'm hitting depth. And then I did an internship at Baylor, the athletic performance team, strength
Oh,
conditioning.
nice.
Yeah, that was back when like USA Today ranked them like the freakiest team in the country.
Mm-hmm.
So we had Sean Oakman and Blake Seastrunk and all those guys there. But then on top of that, like they had the year of the bear right after I got there, and it was like every team won the Big 12 championship. So there was just great athletes everywhere. I worked with like even acro and tumbling; they were great. And talk about strength power athletes. Come on, you know. And but I started seeing like how they're training, and particularly like the track team. I saw one of the female throwers doing 315 to a box, and I was like, I don't know if it's good enough for her, and if it's good enough for
Yeah.
Westside, it's probably good enough for me. And so I started incorporating more box squats at that point, and like I adapted. And it's like you said, I remember like when I was doing my dissertation, I actually did it on motor units, not stocks, and it was like when I finally got an appreciation of what a motor unit actually was. And I was squatting and I was doing box squats, and I would be like, "Ooh, there's a new motor unit! Like I just got a new part of the muscle activated." So yeah, it's funny how you got to go through those learning lessons on doing different things. You don't always have to do something one way. There's always then even now I'll squat ass to grass sometimes, but then sometimes I just squat to a box. You got to mix it up.
Yeah. I think a lot of it goes back to what are your goals? For me, my main goal is more related to grip sport and doing kiteboarding stuff. So if I'm going to get dropped out of the sky 20 feet and try to land on my feet, like I'm probably want the ability to go to a full range of motion by virtue of I may have to get into that, and I don't want that to be like rep one of once I get past parallel, some shit goes wrong. So
Yeah.
I'll live
Oh,
with
there
a
goes an
much
ACL.
lower squat just because it's not specific to what I'm doing. So,
Yeah.
but yeah.
No, I get it. At the time, I was really big on the Olympic lifts.
Oh
So
yeah.
yeah, it just made I front squatted just as much as I back squatted, and so it
Oh
just
nice.
made it made it to me. It was just what I did, and it's what it used to, and it didn't feel like I was going deep. It just felt normal.
Yeah.
I think that's the other thing we forget. So if it feels normal and it doesn't, just let them be, so to speak. And yeah, the conditioning thing, like the aerobic conditioning thing, and then you'll appreciate this too. A proper warm up were two things that
Yes.
I learned way too late in life. I would have saved myself, and to your listeners here, this is the most important thing we'll talk about. Learn those two things, and you'll save yourself so much pain and misery.
Yeah. I even now I have this weird thing where it's yes, people should do a warm up. Yes, you should be prepared. No, don't do any stupid stuff. Yes, I did way too much stupid stuff. But I also have this other thing in the back of my head where I feel like I'm running this line of I want to be able to do warm ups. I don't want to get injured in a controlled setting, which is the gym. I'm not getting paid to do this stuff. But I also don't want to be the old guy who shows up at the gym an hour beforehand before he could do anything at all. So I feel like if I'm getting strained too far away, I'll do weird stuff like, okay, can I walk in and do like an axle deadlift where grip is going to be more the limiting factor than my back? What's the
Yeah,
heaviest weight I can do that without necessarily doing a warm up, but yet doing it in a very safe manner? And the backup fail safe on that is that it's a 2-inch overhand bar. So if it's not there, my grip's going to fail before I try to look like a pooping dog to get it up. But so I always
yeah,
feel like I'm running this line between the two of can I escalate the stuff I can do without a warm up and do it safe and do a condition well, and also still being safe and not be an idiot at the same time.
no, I like that. That plays on. Oh man, it's a surfer, and I forget who it is. But I'm pretty sure they're a surfer. It might be Kelly Slater, but
Yeah.
whatever. But one of them has a quote, or they have a theory of you got to be able to perform if you're running on like farm truck food. You're not always going
Oh
to be,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, you're not always going to be like on 93 octane like a Ferrari. And for most of us, yeah, I try to eat as good as I can now, particularly with kids, because sometimes things happen and I just can't get in the gym. So it's like I've always liked food. I like donuts and tacos and
Oh, they're
things.
great.
Yeah, that's my weakness, man. That's my biggest drug is food. But I was always able to like outrun it. And as you get later in life and you get more responsibilities, it ain't happening. So, but it's something I've thought about where I mean, some days I'm gonna have what I'm gonna have, and I got to be able to perform. So that's a similar concept. I really like that. That's probably something I should start doing a little bit more.
Yeah,
What can you
it's
go to the gym and like you said, not take an hour. I got a image of a couple people in my own gym where it's
yeah,
like they
you
come
see
in
them
and
at the
out.
gym and it's good for them. I'm glad they're there. I'm glad they're being safe.
Right. Yeah.
But
Little bit of specificity there. Said principle, specific adaptations to impose demands. Because it's, like if you're ready to go on like you're on a trip and you want to go hike up in the mountains. I mean, I say that we got some mountains here, but they're like 2,000, feet. I feel like if when the conferences are in Denver or something, and you want to go out there and you want
mm-hmm.
to hike up like Pikes, or I guess Pikes Peaks is in Colorado Springs, but you want to hike up one of those mountains, like you're gonna do an hour warm up before. You just probably gonna get your friends and go.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I like that. That's a good concept.
Yeah, and the food idea is the same idea I have with metabolic flexibility is that I mean, people assume that it's like, oh yeah, elite athletes, their nutrition's amazing. It's some of them, yes, but a lot of them, like more often than not, the ones I've looked at, like a couple of them, I thought their coach was like punking me. I thought it was like a practical joke. And then you realize, wow, they're doing that on that little of food. And I think of the inverse, where I've worked with some guys who are getting ready to go through selection. And the
Mm-hmm.
guys who are always the hardest are the people who come in who generally more towards a bodybuilding background. Yeah, you might be a little bit heavy. You should probably lose a little bit more weight, even if it's muscle. And you realize you're not going to have all your food perfectly timed out ever. And if you get hangry and can't go to the gym because you missed your 9 a.m. meal, you're screwed. So we add more variability, like fast food. Like eventually, Like, you just want to be able to operate on anything and everything and not worry about it.
Yeah, and I agree completely. I looked at going to officer candidate school at the end of my master's, and then a little bit during my PhD as well. And so I talked to a few guys that had gone through OCS, and then some that we had a few individuals in our lab at UCF that had been in some pretty elite units in the Israeli Defense Force, the IDF.
Oh, yeah.
And I've been fortunate enough to interact with some other members of the Special Forces community of the U.S. in that time since, and asked, "Oh, what can I do to train?" I'm thinking I'm going to get some type of, probably people that come to you some tailored approach.
Yeah.
And it's the one that will always stick in my mind. They'll be like, just have someone set like random alarms for you,
Yep.
and you just have to wake up when that alarm goes and go. So like just
Yep.
do that. Or another one was like, learn to go hungry. That was the stuff they were telling me. And then they said run. So
Yes.
they're like run. So it basically came down to be able to wake up whenever, be able to be hungry and deal with it, and then be able to just run. And if you look at the literature, that's what supports it. The most injuries, those that have like lower aerobic fitness have greater injury rates in like basic combat training and those other school. I mean, basic combat training is not the same thing, but the principle will continue to apply. I mean, low aerobic fitness is a major predictor for injuries in military populations. It's like if you want to be in one of those situations, liftings beyond body weight is probably irrelevant. I'm not saying it's not useful. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, they're not things in a vacuum. I had one guy was like, because I'm a bigger guy, and he was too. He's like, just cut down to make the tape. And he goes, if you make the tape, once you get there, you'll stand out because you'll be able to do things other guys can't.
Yeah.
So he had that for, I mean, it's not like it's for nothing, but yeah, it's just different from what you think going in.
Yeah. I remember a buddy of mine, he was in Iraq, he was an MP there. And he said that on their base while they were there, which was an active war zone at the time, he said their biggest casualty and injury was basketball.
Yeah.
Because he said all these people were not prepared for high velocity change of direction stuff, would go out, and they eventually had to literally ban the basketball court because so many soldiers were getting injured. Just because you're not prepared for it.
And even by the way, even when you are, basketball's a tough one.
Oh yeah,
You know,
it's a
like
violent change of motion, and if your tissue is not ready for that, yeah,
that's the worst I ever hurt myself. I was an eighth grader, so I was a genius, and I was all of 5'8". Then I'm like 5'10", so I'm not much taller now. But, and I'm an Indiana kid, so I should have been hanging out at the 3-point line anyway. But I was like, we got out a chair and we were dunking basketballs off chairs, and that's what I did.
What
I
can go wrong?
put it through, came down, landed, felt fine. 1 step, 2 step, 1 step, and then I took my second step on my left foot.
Oh,
I tore both tendons on each side of my ankle.
oh,
Yeah. So haven't done it since because I haven't tried to dunk a basketball off a chair since then. But anyway, there's another lesson your listeners shouldn't do, I guess.
yeah, that whole at least when you're doing your own vertical, like your neurology will stop you a little bit, right? Your brain will be like, hey, you're not going to take off so high if you can't support that landing. But if we use technology like a chair and override that, some bad stuff could happen.
Like I said, I was an eighth grade. I'm not saying I'm much smarter now, but I'm a little bit smarter. I'm sure we were trying to impress someone, right?
Oh, yeah.
Eighth grade boys. I'm sure there was like a coach or some girls or something we were trying to like, or each other, most likely.
Totally. And tell us a little bit more about the study you did on the military people, right? If I remember right, you're trying to simulate an overtraining scenario, right? And then you were using testosterone and some other stuff to see what would be effective countermeasures.
Yeah, and to be fair with all these like military studies, I'm like, this is like the slide of the presentations. Like, I'm a very small part of this. Like Dr. Frando is a big part. It was my postdoc mentor, and then Stephen Pasiakos, who was the division chief up at USARIUM for the military performance division. Now he's like director of NIH, his Office of Dietary Supplements. I mean, it was like something they've been wanting to do for years. So them, and then one of my good friends from University of Central Florida, a year behind me, Alyssa Varanowski. She's a lead author on that paper.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it was really cool because I was here at UMS and she was at USARIUM, and so we got to work together through this bridge again.
Nice.
Yeah, she was right behind me in my PhD, same mentor. Like we were each other's right hand person. so to speak. So it was good to work with her again. And there's a bunch of others involved, everyone at Pennington Biomedical. That is where the study took place. And that's important to mention Pennington, because for listeners that don't know, that's like the creme de la creme of these types of studies. It's completely it's inpatient. Part of the study was inpatient, so it's completely controlled when they're at Pennington, like how much they're doing, when they're eating, when they're sleeping, what they're taking in. I mean, it's an inpatient setting. Everything's controlled. So, and to be fair, this was the second study where they looked at this. The first study is same thing, but they did OPS1, and their performance measures were more clinical oriented. Good things we would do with like cancer patients, knee replacement, like dynamometry, things like that. Good clinical measures of muscle strength, but not something that maybe is as applicable to SF guys. Something like you're more interested in their ruck time, maybe like a 3-arm deadlift, vertical jump, Wingate. I think we did all that. So that was one change we did from the first study to the second study, is we made it more military task specific. And then as we talked at the beginning, when you and I were just talking off air, first study was, I think, testosterone anthate, which has got like a 1-week half-life. And there is a little bit of concern about, and reasonable concern about, these guys having to do self-administration in the field, because you got to remember the stress that they're not only physically but psychologically.
Oh yeah.
And so we switched to unodecanate, and that's got a much longer half-life. And in fact, that's what they're using for TRT now in older adults, right? Because it's one injection. It's 12 weeks they can get out of it. So those were the two main changes we made in the second study. And there's 3 phases. Phase 1's collecting baseline, right? Their community. And we assessed the whole host of things, those measures I mentioned, body composition, the muscle metabolism, whole body protein metabolism, things like that. And so we got their baseline, and then we brought them in to the Pennington Inpatient Center, where everything's as controlled as it can be. And for 20 days, 21 days, 28 days, can't remember exactly. But that phase 2 was completely controlled. And what it was, they had something like a 55% energy deficit. And that's key, because
that's pretty brutal to do for that many days. If people have done it, like there's a couple 1-2 week studies, but to do that for that length of time, that's
yeah. I mean, I always say 30% because of variance. And I don't want to get too deep in the weeds on this podcast, but a lot of people say anything 40% and up, you can gain muscle mass while losing fat mass, that whole thing.
Body recomp.
Yeah, and I know where that data is coming from, and I agree with that statement. But if you dig a little deeper, you'll see some people that when they're at a 40% energy deficit, the variance measures cross over to where they're actually, some of them are losing mass.
Yeah.
So I always like to put it at 30%, but anything over 30, 40% with just resistance training and protein, I think, is usually at 0.6. Anything beyond that, you might mitigate the loss of muscle you would if you weren't eating more protein or lifting, but you're going to lose muscle. So we had 55%, pretty high. And I think in those, man, I'm going to forget, but I think that placebo group in those 20 days, I think they lost over 1 kilo of lean mass, but I want to say they lost like 4 kilos total, which, I mean, that's aggressive. So,
oh yeah.
So they have the energy deficit. And by the way, it's diet and exercise induced. It's not like you're just dieting. Like they're doing ruck marches, they're doing pretty aggressive training, because if you look at some of the previous studies, Lee Margolis, who's also at UCarium, he has a study where the Norwegian training, winter training, and they had these huge 40% energy deficits, but they're taking in 4,000 calories. But they're
they're much higher flux rate too, which I think is, yes, your caloric deficit is the same, but to me, the physiology is just different.
Yeah, so they're expending 6,000 calories. So anyway, that you got that large energy deficit, but then on top of that, what they didn't do in the first study that we changed in the second study was we added in the sleep restriction component. Because if you're out on the mission, you're probably not sleeping you're not going to get your 8 hours of sleep, right, to maximize muscle protein synthesis. So they did, I think it was like 3 days in a row, they only got 4 hours.
Oof.
And then they got 2 days where they could get a full 8, and then 3 days 4, 2 8. So it was like that for 20 days. And for those of you that don't know, I can't remember how many days in a row of sleep restriction will tank test, but it's I know if you do complete sleep deprivation for a day, you can become hypogonadal. But anyway, so we just did restriction, and so they did that for a second phase, and then after that was that inpatient phase. And then what we did after that was like simulate. Okay, that was the mission. That was the simulated sustained operation, right? Was that for 20 whatever days we did. And then after that, they went home. Like you would return from the mission, you would go home and they just lived their normal life, ate what they wanted to eat, could eat whatever they want, no restrictions, didn't have to exercise, could sleep how much they went. And so that was generally the study. And the major take-home points of the study was that both groups lost the same amount of body mass during that inpatient period, right? But the placebo group that did not get testosterone lost, I think it was like basically an equal amount of fat and equal amount of lean mass. The testosterone group lost it all as fat mass.
Wow.
They didn't gain any lean mass, but they
Right.
basically stayed steady.
Huh.
And if you look at the research on testosterone, that makes sense. Like you take burn injury, which most may not be interested in, but the fascinating pathology, because it's the most catabolic thing we've ever measured. It's a hypermetabolic state. I mean, just the whole system is complete survival state. To the point where muscle protein synthesis is actually elevated like 2 times higher in burn patients. It's the highest rates of protein synthesis you'll ever measure, but their breakdown rates are elevated threefold.
Astronomical. Yeah.
Huge. And you can feed them, like they'll put tubes in them and you can feed them all day, but they develop fatty liver.
So it's not being shunted correctly.
Yeah, it's not a calorie problem, because at that point the muscle is no longer an anabolic organ. Right? It's just, so the only thing that can save them and get the muscle back to zero, just like we did in that study, is testosterone.
That's because testosterone is massively anti-catabolic?
I think I'm going to go out on a limb here, but we do know that it makes protein synthesis more efficient. And it probably does it in all organs and tissues. But at least at the muscle level, we know that it decreases the amount of, if you read the papers, it'll say it decreases breakdown. But I'm lucky that the guy that did all the work is next door.
Yeah.
So I can always ask him. And if you get into the weeds of what the method is, and I tried to bring this up at the conference last year when I talked about it. What it's actually doing is it's not preventing breakdown, right? Your myofibrils, the proteins in the muscle can still break down. What it's preventing is once those proteins are broken down into their individual amino acids, they're still in the muscle cell, but they no longer go back out into the bloodstream to give it to other organs. They can get reincorporated into new protein through protein. So it increases like the recycling. It's not a futile cycle. It's important that happens, but so more of it's getting shunted back into synthesis and making new proteins to adapt to the stress being placed on the body, and less of it's going back out to support the kidney, the liver, the brain, the heart. And so one of two things must be happening, or maybe both. One, there's probably improved protein synthetic efficiency in all organs, since if the other organs didn't, if the muscle's holding on to the amino acids, that means the other organs don't need it.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's what's cool about the muscle. And so the synthetic efficiency is more efficient. And my guess is that, and this would line up with kind of the results we saw, you're able to, because protein synthesis is expensive, so you're able to extract energy more efficiently from maybe like fat, I guess, or there's got to be some type of more favorable muscle energetics in order to allow protein synthesis to continue on. It's a little deep in the weeds, but I try to keep it as
but that would explain some of the anecdotal data and some published data too of testosterone being amazing for body recomp. It appears to be one of the agents that my hypothesis here is that natural athletes not using anything, you would think in theory, like on paper, right? You're like, okay, so I'm in a moderate caloric deficit. Why can't I just take energy from fat? Even a lean athlete has plenty of fat. Use that to fuel muscle protein synthesis. And it just doesn't seem to work that way.
And to your point, this is why I think muscle is so cool. Like one paper I wish I read is Bob Wolf's 2006 paper. It's called The Underappreciated of Muscle in Health and Disease. It's an excellent paper. And the whole role of muscle, I used to always teach my students that the liver was very unselfish, and it is. Most college students just punish it out. But and that the muscle is very selfish, right? If glucose is out there, the muscle is going to gobble it all up. If the amino acids are out there, it's going to take it all up. But it's doing that so that when there's a period of stress, The muscle is so good at giving every other organ the amino acid it needs. And if you look at the old Belfast starvation studies, Warsaw Ghetto studies, where these large communities are fasting for various reasons, what happens is the amino acids, blood amino acids, will dip down a little bit in the first 3 days. And you see this in he's an old Harvard physiologist. I always forget his. Oh, George Cahill studies.
Oh, yeah.
Great studies from the 70s, starvation.
Yeah. Stuff you would never be able to repeat now, where
no,
you put them on a ketogenic diet and gave them shots of insulin and just watch their glucose just plummet.
Yeah, another great rabbit hole for readers to go down to is his just entire PubMed list. But he had a quote in one of his, if you're prolific like that, you always write these big papers summarizing your career. And it was in 2006, he said something like muscle nitrogen is probably the predominant predictor of survival in man, particularly in a pregnant environment. So like connecting that back to the point Bob makes in this muscle, the unappreciated role of muscle in health disease is that after those first couple of days, and you see these in Cahill studies, those blood amino acids come back up to basal values and they stay there. They stay at basal values till the organism dies.
And so that's the muscle kicking out more amino acids because it realizes, oh, we need amino acids to run other shit around here. Where are all the stored amino acids? Oh, amino acid pool is depleted. Boop, out they go from the muscle.
Yeah, every cell needs protein synthesis, needs protein turnover. And muscle is a much lower survival priority to organ than your heart, your brain, your liver, and your kidneys. So you see that. And there's actually some human case studies you can get into, and there's plenty of animal work that shows there's plenty of energy left. There's plenty of fat left. To your point, there's plenty of fat left to provide energy. So that connects back to Cahill's point of like muscle nitrogen is probably the predominant predictor of survival of a human in a state like that. So I can't remember what the original point was that got us on that rabbit hole, but I love this stuff. So.
No, that's great. And that's some of the data too.
About testosterone.
And so we're talking about testosterone being maybe anti-catabolic, or it appears to help with recycling of amino acids.
Yeah. And the beautiful thing about testosterone is that it works in the fasted state, right? Yeah, most of everything else we have is in the fed state, and it's more stimulating MPS, which is very important. You probably should stimulate MPS in order to turn over that protein pool and get rid of any damaged proteins that may exist. But as far as I'm aware of, testosterone is one of the few things that works when you're not eating, right? So that's, I think, what makes it so potent, particularly for bodybuilders or in the study we saw. And the big caveat to that study that we did was we didn't see an improvement in performance. But first off, the control group never really got hypogonadal. They stayed in eugonadal range.
Which I think is surprising. I would have expected that they're going to be tanked. They're going to be so fucked.
I was shocked. I got asked on a previous podcast about this. I can't remember because in my head I'm like, they should be, right? And so I made sure to read it this morning before we went there. Like, no, it flat out says they never got hypogonadal like we saw in Brad Nindle studies in the Ranger schools where they do. So there might be something about the environment. Maybe it was too nice being in an inpatient place and they need to sleep on the ground. I don't know. But, so the placebo group stayed eugonadal. The testosterone group didn't get super physiological, got right on the high end of normal for a couple of days, which I actually think is the strength of the study. So we're comparing like low end normal, high end normal. And then on top of that, like we said, we're talking about 20 some days. And then the important thing too is that after the 20 some days, the testosterone group had, just by getting the high end of normal, and preventing them from getting to the low end of normal, they maintain their muscle mass. So if we were to go another 20 days,
they might
do better then.
Yeah.
So that some people held on to that. We didn't see a performance improvement. It's like, I get it. Believe me, that's how I train. I'm not getting on stage anytime soon trying to look pretty. I like to see weight move. But if we extended that a little longer, there's a lot of different ways we could have gone with it. But I still think it was a very important finding. And it's huge to show that you can do this lack of sleep, which I forget the lead author, but I know Stu is involved, where they showed that sleep restriction lowers muscle protein synthesis, and they can get rescued with HIIT training.
Yeah, that was fascinating. That's so crazy.
Yeah, who'd have thought muscle contraction is good for you?
Right? Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, darn. So we take that, and then we take something like 50% energy deficit, or whatever we had them on, it was high. And you can still rescue the loss of muscle mass just by getting on high energy. So I don't know. I think it's a lot more interesting finding when you dig deeper into the details than if you just read the title there. It was a really fun study to play a very small part in. Like I said, it's a big push from people that have been trying to get that study done for years. So
Yeah, it also makes me think of, I think so often, at least in training, trying to get greater gains and body comp, all this stuff, we're always thinking about what can we do? What are things we can add? But I think we tend to forget that over the long term, if you can just be a more resilient organism, you can handle more stuff at a lower cost, which is something I always think about is, okay, if we look at like high level athletics, right? So you probably need a bigger aerobic base. You probably need to be stronger. You need good sleep. You need good nutrition. But all these things are to make you more resilient. So once you're in season, you're going to make it through the season, right? You're going to go down, but you're not going to go down as much as to someone who's like completely untrained and has rhabdo on day 4 and they're fucked.
yeah. I work mostly in the clinical space now, and my little area is better than most when it comes to an academic medical center. There's a reasonably good appreciation for the role of muscle. But it can be difficult to convince people that, hey, this is important to study clinically.
Yeah.
And this, I make that we saw it in the burn patients. But as soon as we gave them testosterone, I didn't do this work. I was like 6 years old. But Arnie and Bob, when they gave testosterone to burn patients and they're able to save the muscle mass, they saved the organism.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just a paper that came out 6 months ago where they see, I think 18 months prior to diagnosis of pancreatic cancer, they get this giant drop in muscle tissue and muscle mass. I think they measured it by BIA, and we can
Yeah, but
talk
still.
about our ears are blue about
Yeah.
BIA, but from a clinical perspective, it's probably reasonable. Like
Yeah.
BMI
You're in the
is
ballpark.
probably, yeah, BMI is probably reasonable on a population level.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the fact is you saw a giant decrease. It's not measurement error, like it's consistent. And so it just goes to show you that the more muscle you have, the more resilient you're going to be to injury, illness, whatever may be taking you out from this optimal state. I think is a good way to take it. And I'm always trying to, I think that pancreatic cancer is a good one to look at. It's, man, if the muscle mass starts going down and nothing else has changed, we got a problem.
Yeah.
Something's going on. So I've always tried to make that point.
Yeah, that's great. Is there anything else other than testosterone that does similar effects?
Not to that degree.
Yeah.
Right?
I haven't seen anything, but I'm always curious because I keep in the back of my brain, I'm like, there's a mechanism there. It's exerted. It does it by using this thing, but are there other things that could get a similar result? And I don't have anything.
You know what improves like net balance? There's something else that'll improve the net balance of protein status by reducing breakdown without really increasing synthesis. And it gets a little messy, but I forget the lead author, but that's actually an older study where they infused beta hydroxybutyrate.
Oh, okay.
But I think there what you're doing is you're just decreasing flux. And so you're getting but that would make sense if you think about how we evolved. If beta hydroxybutirate's out in the system, we're probably in a survival state. We're probably looking for food. So it would make sense to decrease the flux rate of protein metabolism in order to conserve it as much as possible and food could be found. I'm shooting from the hip there, not well known. There's, I believe, Tyler Churchward Vane is actually looking at this exact thing. If you want clinicaltrials.gov, I think he has a study looking at ketone ester ingestion and protein metabolism. So I'm really interested to see those results whenever they're available. But
yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because as a full disclosure, I do help with some clinical studies for Tecton who make ketone ester, which actually doesn't taste like shit. It actually tastes pretty decent. All the other ones are just absolutely horrible. But one of the little experiments I was going to try based on that data and some of the data that it has maybe a mild appetite suppressant effect is if I got crazy and did 1 or 2 days of fasting and just had some essential amino acids and BHB, would I make the fasting easier? Would I have enough amino acids and maybe BHB to prevent any sort of breakdown of muscle tissue while still cutting out a high amount of calories during the day? I don't know. I mean, this is all like we're super far out on the limbs of trees here and stuff, but
Yeah, like disclaimer, anyone listening, we're having fun right now.
yeah. Like this is not a clinical study that's been completed.
Yeah, we're not saying that this is going to work. This is just like
Right.
this is just like fun stuff we like to do, and we're nerds. Well, I think
Yeah.
that's cool. Like I said, I know that I've seen. Like I said, I know Tyler Churchward Vane has that study, at least on clinical trials. It's there. I've seen the study where they infused it,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's another study like that came out in 2018 ish, 2017, 2018, some one of those Frontiers journals. They showed some type of potentiation of mTOR. I think it was like cell culture. So I'm not hating on cell culture, but man, you put anything directly on a muscle cell,
Yeah,
probably
it's
over.
not the same.
Yeah, I mean, and anyone that does cell culture work will tell you that. But look, I mean, testosterone's like that's like a shotgun. The rest, everything else we're
Yeah.
talking about's like a little hammer.
Yeah.
Not that the other stuff isn't important. I still think the most important thing for muscle protein turnover is resistance exercise or physical activity, and then some type of muscle contraction. It's by far the most potent stimulator of muscle protein turnover is just having strong muscle contraction. If you have your physical activity, that's great. Get your 10,000 steps in a day. Lee Brain's group from Birmingham has shown with, I think it's Lee, Paul Morgan, James McKendry, those guys, they've shown that particularly I think they use obese individuals or people with obesity as the model, and they show that if you have this step reduction, you get decreased rates of muscle protein synthesis, and therefore that affects. But there's a study, a dime a dozen, from Stu to Nick Bird to all the stuff they done, Eucerium, and this was some of the stuff that one of my other main colleagues that I worked a lot with during my postdoc, one of my battle buddies, was Dr. Jess Gwynn at Eucerium. And most studies when they do these trials, they do these period ones, period twos, your fasted kind of state and your fed state. And
Mm-hmm.
we were putting the exercise in the fasted state and the nutrient just in the fed state, so we could just look at the nutrient status. But that exercise elevates it. And she picked up on it. I had to be like, oh, I went back and looked in the literature, and you're totally right. And the exercise just increases the rate so much. So resistance exercise is very potent. So I always say we take testosterone out of the equation. Physical activity and sleep, like those right there. Some type of resistance exercise, although that's not hating on aerobic training, right? We wrote a
Yeah,
song,
totally.
a whole love sonnet to aerobic training to start this thing off. And it's important to know that the stress Nick Bird's got a great study from a while back where he shows that you got to look at the different fractions too when you're talking about the training. Like aerobic athletes get a huge increase in mitochondrial protein synthesis.
Yeah.
They don't get as large of an increase in MOFID, the sarcomeric portion. Whereas the people that are doing resistance exercise, they get this larger increase in the sarcomeric portion, but not as high in mitochondria. So it's all going up. It's just where the amino acids need to go based off the stress given. So yeah, you get that stuff and you get the resistance exercise. And then after that, it's like total protein intake in a day. And then after total protein intake, you really are starting to split hairs. I would say it's supplementation. In fact, I think you might have been in the conversation that Dan Moore and I had at ISSN.
Yeah, we were there after the president's dinner. That was fun.
Yeah, and I was like, I think it's supplementation. Are you sure it's not distribution, right? We had a whole, and so I mean, I have a study that shows supplementation twice a day increases the daily MPS rate by 25%. And when I look at the distribution studies, you do the small effect of evenly distributed, but it's not 25%. So I don't know. I mean, but my point is now we're really starting to split hairs. After you get your activity in, you sleep, you eat enough protein, and you exercise. After that, do what you want.
Yeah.
Maybe
And
don't
even if you're
binge drink.
hitting, yeah.
What can you take away?
Yeah.
Don't binge drink, that type of stuff. But after that, we really start splitting hairs.
You're eating a significant amount of protein, right? So if I translate it to the English system, because nobody understands metric, right? You're looking at what 0.7, grams per pound of body, somewhere in there on the low end, maybe up to the mythical, gram per pound of body weight. I don't know if you would agree with that. And the second part would be, if you're eating that much protein, you by definition are probably having to distribute it out over maybe 4 meals anyways. You get the distribution there when you titrate the dose high enough almost.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, I mean,
yeah, you can do some math and work around and eat 21-ounce T-bone for dinner or something, but you're not going to do that.
yeah, no, I agree, and I think your range is probably reasonable for most people. I unfortunately do fall in that metric system of zero point 0.8 to 1.6, but that roughly
Yeah,
correlates with the nice
it
numbers.
correlates to about the same, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think 1 gram per pound is that's 2.2 grams per kilo. But
Yeah.
Good luck, by the way. It's harder than you
Yeah.
think.
Oh, it's way harder than people think.
Yeah, I've done it. In fact, we have a pretty non-invasive, not that I'm against biopsies, but I try to save my biopsies on my leg until it's something more interesting. But I really want to do a day where I do something egregious like 4 grams per kilo and look at my whole body protein turnover. Like we not rough. It's better than nitrogen balance. It's a step above that, but it's not like an infusion. And so I want to look at something crazy, like I said, like 4 grams per kilo, which is that's close to 2 grams per pound. So that'd be a lot of fun. But we're doing a study right now where we're actually looking at time restricted feeding. That was the thing I was pointing to earlier. And it's on clinical trials, so I can talk a little bit about it. But we got like the RDA versus double, so 0.8 versus 1.6 grams per kilo. And then what we're going to do is we have a group doing like 3 discrete meals, so to speak, versus a group that I wanted to go as extreme as possible. So I've worked with a lot of like pretty good scientists that do mice work, and something that always struck me that they said is if you don't know the right dose, make sure you blow them up and get a response. And so I've taken that. It's like, what's the most extreme form of this distribution thing? It's like that. It's the 1 meal a day, but I don't want to get into that. I did the 6-hour feeding, 18-hour fast.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
one group's the 3 discrete, and the other group. So we got 4 groups. But the point I'm trying to make with this is that those that even just get the RDA, and they're doing the 6-hour feeding, 18-hour fast, they're struggling to get all the food out.
It's hard.
It's hard to eat that much food, and then you get to 1 point. I mean, I'd have no issue. Like, I can eat. And by the way, the other funny thing about that study is that we use a great local meal service here. I forget the name of it. I should probably know, so give them some free PR, but I'll figure it out later. We like do the study. We feed these people coming in. Like, these studies are expensive for those that don't know. Like, we feed them for 2 days, and then we bring them in and fix all this. And isotope tracers aren't cheap. Like, deuterium's like $1,000 a liter right now. So yeah, makes gas look cheap. But they bring the food here, and then we give them to the participant, and they're like bringing in the food, and I'm like, I felt bad for their delivery people. They look like the Amazon driver coming to my house at Christmas. That's how much, like, these giant bags. And so it was like beef and rice, and they could do like Brussels sprouts or snap peas or broccoli, or all of it was like very nice, or like berries and strawberries and blueberries and stuff like that. There was not a cookie in sight. You know what I mean? And it's just a huge volume of food, and our participants are just struggling to eat it. And so it was one of those wake up calls, like what we're talking about here. It's if you get to high enough protein intake, one, the distribution thing solves the problem. And then secondarily, if you just didn't eat Twinkies, so to speak, I'm not being mean. I had ice cream last night. My wife is like superhuman. Like, we moved in together, and I gained 20 pounds off the bat because she can have like cookies and stuff in the house and it doesn't bother her. Me, I'm like, oh, that cookie's there. It needs to eat, So I have a weakness for it. So I'm not hating on anyone. I get it. I understand the struggle. But it was like a wake up call to me. I was like, oh, I guess if I just didn't eat cookies, I probably wouldn't have anything to complain about, because they struggled eating the food. So yeah, I to your main point, stories aside, high enough protein intake, you're going to solve the distribution problem. So you fix that protein intake, then you fix the next level. And most of us probably have some type of supplement anyway. So that problem solved too. So I think a lot of it becomes a moot point. I think the more interesting stuff is where I'm more interested in nowadays is the clinical side of things. Like I'm looking at head and neck cancer, where they
Hmm.
struggle with swallowing, dysphagia, and things like that, but also how we can enhance the anabolic response during suboptimal scenarios. So there are these compounds like you're talking about,
Yeah.
something like testosterone, but something that's a little safe for safety profile in women, right? And it's not that it's unsafe. This is important because testosterone can be very hard to study because of the perceived bias against it, and it's earned it not to its own fault, but really because of meatheads. And
Yeah.
I say that as a bona fide meathead.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate because if you look at like I think it was a study in cancer patients, which makes sense since that's what I'm working on. It actually showed like improved cardiovascular parameters. So it's
Hmm.
actually good for cardiovascular health, but that's in a disease clinical population. And if you look at
Right.
when they use it to treat obesity, if you get high enough obesity in men, a lot of them become hypogonadal. And they see improvements in
Mm.
sort of like they see the obesity gets better, the class levels go down with obesity, and on top of that, they see improvements in blood pressure and all these other cardiovascular parameters. So it's not that it's a dangerous drug; it's dangerous when it's abused, just like anything else. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, But my point is, in women, it's got these secondary characteristics that are not always appreciated. So it's what can be done. Can we find something that we could use that may not have these secondary characteristics? And I think that's an interesting area, although it's failed miserably so far, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
SARMs, myostatin inhibitors. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a tough area, but I think it's interesting.
Yeah, totally. As we get closer to the end here, what are your thoughts about, you mentioned supplements, about, do you have like a hierarchy of supplements? I always think of whey protein, and maybe if someone's a vegan, like some of the mixed forms where you can get enough amino acids, and then you're down to essential amino acids and then branch chains. I don't know if you have any sort of hierarchy, or how do you think about them?
I mean, I'm like I'm on an advisory board for a supplement company. It's called Shift. So you can look them up. I don't
Hmm.
care. I don't make any money off you buying supplements from them. I get paid a flat rate. And I do consulting work for people that are trying to make supplements. And it's funny because I like to make sure this is known, but and you probably know this, 99% of the time my job is to say, yeah, that's not going to work. Like
Oh yeah, like if you're
my job
consulting,
is, yeah, my job is not
nobody
like,
likes you in the room because you're the
yeah,
person who just pisses all over their leg and tries to tell.
yeah, it's not a great role. So I'm not out here to make their product look like $1 million, but yeah. So anyway, so I don't make any money from supplements. I just like to make sure that's said before I start recommending supplements. Like whatever,
Yeah,
maybe some
totally.
conflict of interest, but like I said, I make no money off it, and usually I'm like, yeah, that's not going to work. So good luck. But yeah, I'm with you. I like whey protein or some type of crystalline essential amino acids. I think they have different roles. Right now, I'm doing this. There's this product. It's that company, right? Because why wouldn't I buy it from them? But they have 10 grams of whey protein isolate and 10 grams of crystalline essential amino acids in it. So you get 15 grams of
Hmm.
EAs and 5 grams of not. And I really like it. And it's just a little easier on my gut. I guess as I'm getting older, I'm getting a little sensitive, but whey protein isolate's fine. It's just I feel like I can take it in the morning, and there's no bloating at all. You know what I mean? There's nothing
Hmm.
you barely even feel it because it's mostly crystalline amino acids. There's no digestion that has to occur. But then for some reason, and this stuff is in its infancy. This all starts off as you said the word earlier. What's it called? Where like it's you and I notice it, but it's not in the literature yet. But there's been a bunch of us where it seems like there's a little bit like we feel a little cognitive boost, so to speak, like a little
Hmm.
like
Yeah.
kind of maybe not executive function per se, but some type of focus improvements when we take it. So we're like, oh, we need to. So we're trying to get some studies going actually on looking at the role of these amino acids in cognition. But yeah, I mean,
Interesting.
so yeah, I'm really excited about that stuff because some of my PhD work was on cognition. So I think it's really cool. And anytime I feel that little effect, I'm like, ooh, what's going on here? So I don't know, we'll see. And there may be nothing, it might be placebo, but so yeah, I like a whey protein or even that product I mentioned, and I prefer isolates just because like I don't like to feel much in my gut. But creatine, I think there's actually more same line. Actually, there's better evidence for creatine in brain health than maybe muscle mass and performance. But I think it's 10 grams a day is what you got to take for the brain health. So creatine, protein, I like my caffeine. I think
Yes.
some days I'm up to a gram a day on caffeine. So I take mine in espresso form and tea. I do not bias against the forms in which I get it. But then after that, it starts. I mean, if you want beta alanine, sure, some people like
Yeah.
it. If you want, trying to some people like that tart cherry juice extract, cool. Some people like citrulline malate. Like I got a friend that he's all about citrulline malate. He loves that feeling. He loves the pump. So good for him. There's all this stuff down there that seems like there's pretty reasonable evidence for, where it's if you want to take it, go for it. And then like estrogen, I think is there too. I'm trying to think of
Hmm.
the other stuff that's in the product I took right before this podcast. I'm trying to think of what's in it. What's a good example of you like beetroot juice, right? There's some, yeah, nitrates.
Yeah.
There's good evidence on that, but it's like it's there's some specificity there. Same thing with beta alanine. Like it definitely
Yep.
increases carnosine, but carnosine's a weird effective range as a buffer. It's not like you're not really going to get it when you're lifting, and you're not really going to get it when you're doing long distance running. But yeah, but then there's another. Then below that, you start getting into stuff like my thesis was on ursolic acid. There's a few studies on ursolic acid, pretty interesting compound, but nothing like strong there. Rhodelia is a pretty interesting compound, but there's some few studies there, but nothing. It doesn't have the body of evidence that like a citrulline malate or beta alanine would have, but they even fail in comparison to like whey protein and caffeine. So I think it's probably a very traditional hierarchy of supplements. And then
I
I
would
think
probably
one,
throw BHB ketones into the mix, potentially
yeah,
what you're
yeah,
looking at.
yeah, that's getting really interesting because there's that study, I think it was in Journal of Applied Physiology, just came out that showed like an increase in blood dopamine levels, which I
Yeah.
think is really cool. And then one that we didn't touch on, but it's Pandora's box right now is the probiotics. And
Hmm.
I think if you mentioned vegans and vegetarians, I think if you're a vegan, vegetarian, probiotic is something to really consider to help with the digestion of the plant protein. So I think that's like an example of like how can we enhance it in response? How can we enhance the suboptimal profile or delivery format? And I think that's an interesting area of probiotic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then last question. If you're using an essential amino acid product, one thing I've noticed, it appears that the label may say like 10 grams or 6 grams, but if you look at the individual amino acid breakdown, maybe it's just me and I've just looked at too many different products, but it appears like it's the Wild West of these are all essential amino acids, but they don't show up in the same amounts. There appears to be a large variability of which ones they stick in there.
Yeah.
Is that just whatever the menu, or I don't know?
I think part of it is because there's a little bit of the Wild West there. I've seen they'll do if they do one of those combo products, or if they do an EA product alone, like you're talking about, sometimes I'll see it like in the composition of egg white protein. I've seen it in the composition of whey protein,
Right.
all those types of things. And I'm sure some of that's to get around patent law or this, that, and the other.
Mm,
And I bet that's part of it. Not something I'm an expert on. I'm just a physiologist. I bet as long as it's in the profile of something we consider a quality protein source, and it's got 2.5 grams of leucine, preferably three,
probably fine. Yeah.
probably fine. Yeah, probably gonna
Yeah.
work. I had something. Oh, and yeah, they'll say they're calorie free. Sometimes they're not. Right?
Yeah.
Each gram is 4 kcals. The thing is, they tend to be less calories than like a whey protein drink.
Yep.
That they do tend to, and you see the same thing with the clear whey. And I think it's just they're able to flavor it better and whatnot. But they are less calories than like a whey protein. Not that there's anything wrong with whey protein. It just they're the point is if you see 0 calories on an EA product, it's either not an EA product or it has calories.
Yeah. And I was able to try, I think it was ProBev. That's one of the nuclear whey from a company here I've just been testing out. And that was amazing. Like they got the flavor profile, one of them like really good. And it had zero of the, because I have some clients who don't like the milk, even with the isolate. Like
Yeah.
it literally tasted completely different and was like 20 grams of protein. I was like, holy crap, this was pretty amazing.
Yeah, and here's a good little trick I learned from a RD, Ricky Keene. I hope she doesn't mind me saying her name. She was with the Orlando City soccer teams at the time.
Hmm.
She was doing Orlando's hot, right? They get done
Yeah.
with practice. The last thing they want is milk, It's the
Yep.
last thing they want. So that's a good use of the crystalline EAs. Or she was doing BCAs, but I think you're better off getting, I think, like if you're going to go
Yes.
that route, just do the EAs. And what she would do to make it even more palatable is she made it a popsicle, which I thought was
Oh, nice. That's
genius.
brilliant.
Genius. Yeah, it's
Yes.
brilliant. That's what I want to give her credit
Yeah.
for. And I hope I'm not giving away her tips and tricks that make her competitive. If so, we'll figure it out. But yeah, I mean, I thought that was genius. So like I'm in Arkansas, it's hot here. And so that's a
Yeah.
nice little trick sometimes, a little EAA popsicle. It's
I like
refreshing.
that.
Yeah. And you could do that with the
Nice.
Pro Bev. I've had that Pro Bev
Yeah.
beverage. I think you could do the same thing with that. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's a
Oh,
good
that's
form.
that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Nice. Thank you so much for all your time here today. Really appreciate it. Where can people find out more about you? I know you put out a fair amount of studies on Instagram once in a while. You're in that weird Twitter X space, but you get a lot of cool stuff I see that goes out there.
Yeah, I do post on Twitter more. That's just because it's easier under Dr. Milehead. And so you can see me there. But I am trying to, I keep saying this every podcast, but I really am committed to trying to post more on Instagram. I need to figure
Oh,
out.
nice. That's good. We
Yeah,
need
yeah,
intelligent people like you to.
thanks. But as you can attest to this, I do respond to my Instagram messages. I will go on there
You
and
do,
maybe,
actually. I don't know if
yeah,
you want to
yeah.
make that publicly known, but yes.
If too many of you start, if I get too many, then I won't. But generally
Just
speaking,
go hide.
yeah, generally speaking, if people are nice and respectful, yeah, I'll respond. But I get some rude ones every now and then. I don't respond to that. But yeah, if people are
Yeah.
nice and respectful, I'll respond. So I see it. I don't live on social media, and I've cut out even more of it, even in the last couple months. But I see it, and I try to respond, particularly if it's like someone asks me a question, because I've been there. Yeah, Dr. Milehead.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Thank you for all the continued research at your institution there. To Arnie, thanks, and everybody down there for just all the stuff I've read. Just a lot of the seminal work has come from there. So it's very cool to see that and appreciate it.
Yeah, we appreciate people talking about it. Really do.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much to Dr. David Church for being on the podcast today. Really appreciate it. I appreciate all the research that he has done over the years. Like I said, it was always great to chat with him at ISSN every year. Really fascinating stuff that he's doing. And like yourself, he's also a meathead who enjoys doing research, lifting weights, making it also practical for you too. And if you enjoyed this podcast, please hit subscribe on whatever player you're using. Helps us out with the rankings. Forward it to someone who you find may enjoy this podcast. Help and get all the better information out there on the interwebs. And if you want more from me, go to miketnelson.com/podcast. You can see all the old podcasts that we've done. We've got a whole bunch right now. Guest podcasts will be all listed there. And when you scroll down, you'll be able to get onto the daily newsletter, which is completely free, for more information on how to add more muscle, improve performance, and better your body composition without destroying your health in the process. Again, big thanks to Dr. David Church. Make sure to check out all of his stuff on the socials as typically Dr. Milehead. Always wonderful chatting with him. I can sign up to my newsletter, as I mentioned, miketnelson.com/podcast. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast and making it all the way to the end. Really appreciate it. And we will talk to all of you again next week. See ya.
You know something? That was a sweet number.
It sure was.
You know something else?
What?
I hate sweet numbers.
This podcast is for informational purposes only. The podcast is not intended as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. You should not use the information on the podcast for diagnosing or treating a health problem or disease or prescribing any medication or other treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider before taking any medication or nutritional supplement, and with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard on this or any other podcast. Reliance on the podcast is solely at your own risk. Information provided on the podcast does not create a doctor-patient relationship between you and any of the health professionals affiliated with our podcast. Information and statements regarding dietary supplements are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guest qualifications or credibility. Individuals on this podcast may have a direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to therein. If you think you have a medical problem, consult a licensed physician.